You are, Deanie. We're not saying goodbye, just taking a moment to tell you, Bruce, how much we admire your talent and your professionalism and how grateful we are that we work with you. Bruce Lindsay first came to KSL-TV News in 1974. His considerable talents and audience appeal brought him to one of the most successful trios in American broadcasting, Dick Norris, Bob Welty, and Paul James. He worked for KABC in Los Angeles for several years, returning to KSL in 1978, and has remained a team leader. Anchoring evening newscasts and reporting, everyone knows him as the consummate professional. Our managers and producers turn to him time and again.
Plus a live interview with the newly appointed president of the University of Utah. This is Primetime Access.
In 1982, Bruce helped launch Primetime Access, a multi-award-winning half-hour news magazine. He has led our election reporting since the late 70s, through unusual races and issues and into the wee small hours many times.
Bruce, take it away.
Thank you.
We joked a lot about Bruce and sports, not his forte, but his mastery of Olympics coverage across the globe has been flawless. Just 2 years ago, Bruce launched a new program, Sunday Edition, discussing the main issues of our times. No one could change hats better. The Days of 47 parade route had fewer campers because families stayed at home to watch Bruce, and that brings us to co-anchors. Dick Norris, Shelley Thomas, yours truly, Ruth Todd, and now for 10 years with Deanie. Bruce is so well respected, many journalists got into the business because he is their role model.
An undergrad at Utah State University, where I go out there, and there was Bruce doing his Primetime Access live from the Festival of American West, and had 3 cameras, and he just looked at him, and I said, wow, I want to be like that guy one day.
When I got my internship here, and I was really excited to meet him, and I just remember asking him for advice. He is an icon. He's definitely an icon here.
We have many more newscasts and memorable stories to tell together, my friends. So for now, I'll just say, see you at 6.
Thanks, Carol. The people I work with are the joys of my life. Thank you.
We feel the same way. So, Lene, I think this means we're going to have to celebrate for a few months.
No, we keep our heads down and we do the next deadline.
Someone's got to order pizza, right?
Yeah, lots of pizza.
Yeah. Well, and now we're not saying goodbye because Bruce is going to share this anchor desk with me first. A few more months.
Long time.
But today he did announce that early in the summer he's going to leave KSL News after 36 years. Carol Makita joins me with a look back and some reaction.
Oh, dear.
As you announce a new phase in your life, this is a nice opportunity to tell you, Bruce, how much we respect and appreciate you as our colleague and friend. Bruce Lindsay first came to KSL-TV News in 1974. He left for several years to work for KABC in Los Angeles, returning in 1978. Anchoring evening newscasts and reporting, he is the consummate professional.
The cable industry has been experiencing tremendous growth in the past few years.
In 1982, Bruce helped launch Primetime Access, a multi-award-winning half-hour news magazine. He has led our election reporting since the late 70s, through unusual races and issues and into the wee small hours many times.
Bruce, take it away.
Thank you.
We joked a lot about Bruce and sports, not his forte, but his mastery of Olympics coverage across the globe has been flawless. Just 2 years ago, Bruce launched a new program, Sunday Edition, discussing the main issues of our times. No one could change hats better. The Days of 47 parade route had fewer campers because families stayed at home to watch Bruce, and that brings us to co-anchors. Dick Norris, Shelley Thomas, yours truly, Ruth Todd, and now for 10 years with Deanie. Bruce is so well respected, many journalists got into the business because he is their role model.
You grow up watching KSL, and you know and actually working with him, and I don't know, it's only been a year, but he has been an amazing mentor to me.
And I always thought, this guy's big time, and then when you actually meet him, he doesn't think he's big time. He doesn't treat you like he's big time. Bruce is like one of the class guys in the business.
We have seen hundreds of Facebook comments today like these. Tammy Clifford Larson wrote, "Wow, we become so accustomed to someone that we take it for granted that they will always be there. We will miss you, Bruce." And Brian Gale said he brought credibility to the news. He was my local Walter Cronkite. We have more newscasts together and stories to tell about people's lives, but no one does that better than you do, Bruce.
You're so kind. That was because of the people that I stayed here for 36 years.
Well, in the meantime, we'll enjoy every minute.
Surely will. Thank you.
As you are probably aware, our friend and colleague, longtime anchorman Bruce Lindsay is retiring this coming week. He's had a remarkable career here spanning 4 decades, and we're going to celebrate that in the next several nights. Tonight, as Bruce tells it all started with a fateful visit from that famous man in red.
So I was in about the 5th, maybe 6th grade, and Santa Claus brought me a wind-up Brownie movie camera. And it was my pride and joy, and I became the family chronicler of events and learned to tell stories on the screen. Broadcast journalism is a very natural transition. It's kind of what I did for fun. I was a junior in high school. We had a current events class, and on a certain day, a young reporter came to show us his filmed chronicle of his tour of reporting in Vietnam.
This young man came up to me and started talking to me about how to get into television broadcasting.
Since I had already been dabbling in home movies, I went up after the class, I really did, and introduced myself and said, thanks for your presentation. I thought it was really interesting. I think someday I'd like to do what you do.
We bid our farewells there, and as he turned around, he said, who knows, one of these days I might be sitting next to you. And I laughed. I said, yeah, you might be. By the way, what was your name again? And he said, Bruce Lindsay. I'll never forget that.
I'll never forget the first day I met Bruce. It was 1974. He came up from BYU with a bunch of other people applying for an internship. I was a young news director, and I didn't know much about what I was doing, but I was smart enough to recognize talent when I saw it. And there it sat before me.
Well, and the interview went really well, and I was offered an internship, and not only unpaid internship, but they were going to pay me handsomely the sum of $2 an hour, which just about sounded like the sun, the moon, and the stars.
When Bruce came to KSL in 1974 as a young intern.
Interns were not supposed to be on the air. That was very clear to everybody except the 10 o'clock producer, who hadn't heard that edict. And one night I was the last man standing, and a service station, a gas station, blew up out by the airport somewhere on North Temple. I got my 16mm Scoopik camera, shot the story, came back, had the film processed, wrote a little track on, and put it on audio cassette and handed it to the producer, and she didn't know I wasn't supposed to be on the air. So I cracked that one.
We offered him a job. I said, there's no way we're letting this guy get away. He's too good.
They actually hired me at the amazing sum of $600 a month during my senior year in college.
And it all started with Santa Claus. We'll continue to celebrate Bruce's career with special stories this coming week.
Stretching across the desert from Wendover to Salt Lake City and up over the mountains to Wyoming.
Tomorrow night, you'll see how Bruce brought us Utah's untold stories through his various on-the-road assignments, plus learn how that work led to a news detour to Los Angeles and then back home here again. Bruce Lindsay, a career celebrated tomorrow night on KSL 5 News at 10. Lori?
That is so much fun to watch. And so much fun to watch tonight, the solar eclipse, and you wearing those sunglasses.
A quick attempt to add up Bruce Lindsay's decades-long career can quickly add up to some impressive numbers. Get some of these. Tens of thousands of hours on the air, hundreds of thousands of stories reported, millions of viewers reached. News specialist Carol Makita explains that's pretty impressive, considering that Bruce went into journalism because math, let's just say, wasn't his favorite subject.
As far as I could tell, there was not a lot of heavy math.
So just how many years has Bruce Lindsay spent inside that box in our living rooms?
That's a math question. In the aggregate, I have been at KSL for 36 years. I've been doing broadcast journalism for 38 years. Spent a couple of years in Los Angeles in the middle.
The story of how Bruce Lindsay ended up doing major market TV in Los Angeles actually begins in Utah's majestic back roads in 1974.
Well, I think most of the people today see Bruce as the man behind the anchor desk, but in the early days, he was a field reporter.
One of the things we had him do for a while was we put him in a '57 Chevy KSL-TV once had him drive up and down the state and do a thing called On the Road, a la Charles Kuralt.
Than remain in such a desolate and forsaken place as this.
And he did it as well as Kuralt could have done it.
And we called it initially Kaleidoscope. And I think our first story, we ran up to Lone Tree, Wyoming, and did the story on the only parking meter in Lone Tree, Wyoming. You know, off the beaten path kinds of things that in the mid-'70s were interesting. I don't know that they'd play now. Met a lot of people whose lifestyles and whose passions and whose talents and skills and whose problems and issues seem very far removed from ours today. Spent an overnight and a weekend with a sheep herder up on the Manti-La Sal Mountains.
He set a standard locally for excellence. I think he endeared himself to the Utah audience by being able to tell these stories about humanity, about people, about things throughout the state of Utah. He was a great human interest reporter who eventually evolved into a great political reporter and a very believable anchor.
We weren't the only ones to recognize that talent, and so there was, within a very short time, he was picked up by KABC in Los Angeles.
So I went to the #2 market, Los Angeles, and I saw the big leagues of journalism. They'd send me out to interview a lot of movie stars, and I was not a big movie buff, and I didn't know who these people were.
Wish me luck! I'm gonna make a noise in the world!
You know, famous people. Go out and interview Natalie Wood.
Move over, stars!
Oh, I was supposed to interview Vidal Sassoon on Rodeo Drive. I thought it was Rodeo Drive, but it's Rodeo in Beverly Hills. So it was kind of like, you know, the country bumpkin goes to Beverly Hills.
That was funny. Rodeo Drive. Thanks, Carol. This week, we're celebrating Bruce's remarkable career. Tomorrow night on KSL-5 News at 10, we'll look at how Bruce joined the news team he considered family. We'll also show you a high-profile interview that took an unusual turn. Bruce, a lot of people are wondering, why did you end up coming back from L.A.?
Yeah, really, after you get the hang of hobnobbing with the stars on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, why not stick around and live that up, huh? The truth is I had another itch I needed to scratch. I wanted to go to graduate school, and I couldn't swing that at KABC, but eventually found a way to make it happen at KSL and the University of Utah, and it let me come and work with you and with Kevin Eubank. So, I mean, it was just a very simple decision. But thank you for thanks for your kindness. Thank you very much.
We continue tonight celebrating the 38-year career of my co-anchor and friend, Bruce Lindsay. From the field to the anchor desk, Bruce has a lot of television experience. And being on live TV can be, let's say, very unpredictable.
He was poised at ABC, as far as I know, maybe for some big things. But he wanted to come back home.
If a picture paints 1,000 words. We brought him back in '78. I was 30. He was 28.
In those late 70s, the big team was Norse, Weldy, and James. They were triumphant and ruled the news and had huge ratings. And it was really a change in trend here to have someone come in and co-anchor the news. And Bruce Lindsay was that guy.
It was a pretty heady experience to say that it would be Norse, Weldy, James, and Lindsay at 10 o'clock, because I had looked up to these people for a long time. When I was hired to come and be Dick Norse's first co-anchor, the attorney who looked at my contract said, this may not be a good idea. This is a man who, you know, is pretty sure of himself. He's not going to want this upstart kid sharing his scripts. And he, from the word go, was nothing but supportive and encouraging and helpful. I couldn't have asked for more helpful mentoring.
It was a real family and a real friendship. Nothing phony about it at all.
Bruce is serious when it comes to his craft. He's a terrific broadcaster, and he does it all effortlessly. It looks so easy, but it's hard, and Bruce is so good at it.
Bruce Lindsay is the best when it comes to going with the flow. Live television is very demanding and very unpredictable.
Right now, a representative from the fire department is here in the studio telling me I have to evacuate this building because of the gas leak.
There was no hesitation ever to stick a mic on Bruce, no matter what the situation was, without a script, and say, this is all we know. Go, we're on the air.
You can see that the pictures CBS News has are about 20 minutes old. We're a step ahead of them with our direct satellite feed.
I think it was 1985 earthquake that broke just as we went on the air at 6 o'clock. We were getting information, and he sat there, and we were handing him stuff, and he was going without a teleprompter and covering this thing. We got calls from people that were in San Francisco, didn't know what was going on. They were talking to their family in Salt Lake City that was watching Bruce Lindsay on KSL, getting more information than they were getting in San Francisco.
And we had some really interesting experiences with a high-profile guest.
You know, I am whom I am, and you are who you are. And we all are who we all are. And that's life, guys.
Everybody's talking at me.
Oh, well done, Bruce.
I don't hear words they're saying.
Once Harry Nilsson came in, you know the musician Harry Nilsson? Everybody's talking at me and a lot of songs.
Only kidding, Bruce.
Harry Nilsson came on the set drunk out of his mind. I mean, he was totally drunk. In the commercial break, he said, "Now tell me your name again." And he wrote our names on the palm of his hand and went to the bathroom and then came back and said, "I washed my hand. What's your name again?"
Lots of stories. Bruce's remarkable broadcast career will come to a close tomorrow night on KSL-5 News at 10. And who better to describe this true journalist, this news specialist, than the people who have worked with him and loved him most. That's tomorrow night at 10. And coming up in this newscast, we'll have some fun. We've got the best of Bruce's bloopers.
Where'd you get those?
I know you hate that, but
I highly recommend interviewing drunks. I mean, it makes for really compelling television.
That was good.
Utah's only news helicopter, Chopper 5. Brought to you by Larry H. Miller Dealerships. Driven by you.
This week we're celebrating something very special, a 38-year career of our own Bruce Lindsay. Bruce, of course, has covered some of the biggest stories of our time with integrity and professionalism, but he also knows how to have some fun.
Good evening. How did you like that story?
Not too close, you know.
What do you mean not too close?
The story on Eyewitness News.
Inner sanctum.
That's an unknown.
Weatherman Len Randolph explains why it looks like a lot like Kansas out there right now. Batten down the hatches, and I hope that wasn't live.
I'm twisting my leg.
Be happy.
That's how they say American, Italian, Pakistan.
Perhaps they could
No, I'll get it. Just leave the branch there.
Hey, we watch you on television all the time. We really like you. You're our favorite newscaster. You're Don Olson, aren't you?
Be happy.
Well, we'll let you keep it.
Don't worry, be happy.
Name the seventh dwarf. Happy, dopey, sneezy, sleazy. Oh, well done, Bruce.
Wow, I'm glad to see that even you have some bloopers. How about those?
Credibility is all you have to tread on at the end of your career.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Well, we're sure going to miss you, but this is exciting for you.
It is. Let's go to a commercial break, shall we?
All right. We'll be back with your morning forecast.